don't get an MBA because artificial intelligence is actually going to replace these jobs. I've heard all of these stories and all of these trends. In fact, many years ago, I would have probably have believed many of these trends, these macro trends that happen. But I want you to do a few things before you make this decision about getting a particular degree, what that actually looks like for you before you start looking at these macro trends. I mean, actually look at what people actually normatively do in the field that you want to go into and what that might look like. What degrees do they actually have to actually get there? And it's easy when you look at senior level managers, for example. Just go onto any website of major company and look to see the degrees that these people, these folks actually have, these senior level managers actually have. And you realize that almost all of them have something like an undergrad in engineering, maybe something like an MBA degree, something that is sort of has legitimacy in the outside world. They all have some sort of degree like that, an accounting degree. Now, I also want you to think about, we've had these sort of macro trends before. We've had sort of revolutionary trends that have happened many times before. This is not new. We have technological progress. And I want you to think about all of those people that worked for typewriter, for example, those old machines that used to type on that nobody uses anymore. They're a relic of the past. But all of those engineers, all of those people, all of those accountants that worked for typewriter, because the company dies or the technology dies, doesn't mean that those individuals die as well. This is a really big fallacy that people think about. Those skills that they develop within that particular domain, that as a typist, for example, or as somebody that's actually manufacturing the typewriter, those skills are actually transferable to other areas. And it doesn't mean that that is completely irrelevant. We will never use those particular things again. It means you just simply transfer those skills in some slightly different way that you would never imagine that actually existed. Now, I also want to point out that we've gone through these revolutionary changes before, right? So artificial intelligence is just another technological change. And I want you to think about what happened. How would I imagine the world in 1990? And you would have told me that I would have been able to communicate with anybody around the world, that the political structure would be completely changed because people can communicate very interactively, that the nature of how we do business and what that looks like is completely different today because of digital platforms. You went back to 1990, and if I would have told you that, you would have thought that I was crazy. In fact, I would have thought I was crazy. I wouldn't even know what would have came ahead of me and what that would have looked like. It's very difficult to imagine what these roles are. Who would have ever thought that a YouTuber, somebody that's on a TikTok, whatever, making funny, goofy videos would be a legitimate job today? And yet there's plenty of people that are doing that. It's not large, but there's plenty of people that are doing those particular careers and making a go of it, becoming a YouTuber, where they're just goofing around doing silly things. And that is somebody's job today. I would never have thought of that. Now, the last thing I want you to think about is, let's say you did this MBA, and let's say I eventually convinced you to do an MBA or get an education in a particular area, and you thought, okay, this is dumb, I'm just going to do it because that's what everybody else is doing, and yes, maybe it's going to be transferable, yes, maybe, I've seen technological change before, and I'm going to just do this thing anyways, regardless, because I watched this video on the internet. Now, I want you to think about this particular problem. We have access to information all around the world, and it's the easiest information that we've ever gotten access to. Many people are literate. Not everybody is literate around the world. Not everybody has access to information, but many people do. And yet, how many people do you see going online or going to a library learning about thermodynamics? How many people do you see going to a library learning about the classic literatures of the past? Nobody does that, and yet all of that information is free, all of it's readily available, and you can get it at any given time. So what am I talking about? This is this very simple problem. I want you to imagine another thing that you can do. When I go into the woods, I'm not trained in understanding what any of this stuff is. I kind of see just a bunch of green, and I see some rocks, and I see some trees. That's it. But if I go with a guide that understands all of these different things that are going on, and they can point out all of the different ecology, all of the different stories that are being told with the different, maybe it's leaves or trees or how things are actually functioning, I will see a whole new world that I didn't know existed. And that's what it's like when you go and get an education. You don't necessarily know these things actually exist until somebody actually points out these things, and until you start seeing it, and then all of a sudden everything either looks like an opportunity or it looks like a problem. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I would never have thought of that. And that is the goal, is so you are a little bit more astute to what is going on. It's like me when I go in the woods. I don't see anything. I see green, and it feels nice. But if I go with somebody that is showing me all these things, all of a sudden I see so much amazing things that I wish I would have known earlier. But I can't tell anybody about that because nobody else understands what the woods are. And so I'm just stuck there, kind of in amazement with the woods, not being able to transfer that information to somebody else. And that's what happens all of the time in almost any area of knowledge creation. Knowledge is being created, it's being discovered, but it's hard to transfer to other people. And it's not until you actually understand that knowledge, until you actually see it, that you can actually, that you're willing to transfer that knowledge, you're willing to absorb that knowledge. This is a classic problem that we have. So I encourage you, go and see if that education is right for you. Look to see where it might go to and what you might do with it. And just explore and have fun. And to heck with it. Who cares if you get an education or you don't? I mean, it's just fun anyways, right? Don't take it so seriously at the end of the day is what I'm saying. Yes, there's a cost to it. I get that. But you could do many of these things very inexpensively, and you can explore the realms of this amazing universe very inexpensively and still have fun doing it. No matter how old you are, what you're doing, it is a wonderful world to look at, and you just have to start exploring this particular world that we live in.